Sexual violence never ends because the victims it's so difficult to escape from the trauma. Sexual violence is often challenging to uncover, especially since our laws and regulations often position sexual violence as an ordinary crime. In terms of evidence, each examination is considered old-fashioned to make the victim's trauma worse. Not to mention the prejudice that makes the victims often blame and becomes more complicated when the perpetrators are famous figures. They usually get good prejudice while the victim receives only prejudice. There are structural and cultural aspects to the effort to combat sexual violence. And why is society so permissive and quickly forgets the perpetrators of sexual crimes? Last October, a student in Aceh was asked about her vaccination status when she was going to report an attempted rape she had experienced to the police. On another day, police received the report, but the inspections by the police made her uncomfortable. The experience of this student is one of many victims of sexual violence who do not receive proper treatment. Women's Commission data shows that there are 4,000 cases of violence against women in Indonesia. From January to June, and an 18% increase from 2020. Several cases have emerged and have received public attention, such as the rape case of dozens of students in Bandung, West Java. The rise of sexual violence cases demands the draft of a criminal act of sexual violence. But due to administrative problems, for 6 years, this law was only passed in April 2022. It's not an easy matter for victims of sexual violence to report to the police. Law enforcement officers often ignore the psychological conditions of the victims, and there is no assistance for the victims. Sexual violence cases are also often stopped in the investigation stage due to the lack of evidence and witnesses. Sexual violence is a crime that occurs in a private space that makes the victims feel like hitting a wall while fighting for justice for himself. Many victims end up withdrawing and experiencing psychological trauma. The presence of the law on the crime of sexual violence is expected to become a regulation that favors the victim. This law will provide a place for victims' testimonies and visum et repertum psychiatry, or statements from the doctors who are specialists in psychiatry. Investigators who handle cases of sexual violence must also fulfill specific capacities. There will be assistance for victims during and after the legal process, so the victims can return everyday lives in society again. Therefore, opposing the crime of sexual violence is very important so that law enforcement officers can also act under existing regulations. Because there is already legal umbrella in effect, it will improve the handling of sexual violence cases and provide victims with justice that is their right. Along with the struggle over the law since 2015, sexual literacy as a prevention effort must continue to be carried out. Sexual violence does not only attack physically but also mentally and socially. This issue demands the alignment of all of parties because sexual violence is a public issue, dignity, and worth of the nation. I'm Anissa Salsabila from EEC Unila. Thank you.